Hi, I'm Dr. Jeff Matheson, the founder and medical director of Pure Life Science. I want to talk about our product today, Pure Omega, and how it can help the members of the EB community. I'm a physician. I did emergency medicine for 18 years. I've done chronic pain management for the last 15 years. But in the last 7 or 8 years, I've concentrated mostly on more natural approaches to pain management. And in that road that I traveled, we developed this product that helps in various areas of health, but we did notice some improvements in skin healing, especially in diabetics and things like that. So, to make a longer story short, we were introduced to a member of the EB community in November of 2019, and she graciously agreed to try the product. Now, she has a very severe form of the disease, and she got tremendous results. And because of this initial success, we've now extending an offer to all EB patients to try the product and to see what they think of it. I'm going to go through some of the science behind the product and why we think it works, some of the frustrations that you probably are well familiar with, and knowing that this product is not going to cure anybody. This is a genetic disease, and they will have it for their entire life. But I'm hoping that you will agree that this product will hopefully make your lives a lot better. So, again, in today's world, in the EB community, the current treatments mostly comprise of dressing changes. They can be quite painful, especially in the more severe forms. It's very frustrating. As I said, the patient we were dealing with, she was undergoing 4 hours of dressing changes a day. And there really hasn't been anything more to offer that I've seen. Mostly better Band-Aids, better skin type products, but nothing to address the health of the skin itself. There are some potential future treatments, as you probably all know. There's genetic therapy, bone marrow transplantation, bone protein replacement therapies, cell therapies, but most of these are experimental and years off from being practiced in everyday medical treatment of this disease. So, what can we do right now? Well, one of the things that is important is just optimizing health in general. Now, if you've been a regular visitor to this website, you know there is some nutritional talks that have been done already. I'm going to focus on only one area of that with this product, and that's omegas and how important omegas are to the health of the skin, but particularly omega-6. And I want you to try and dispel most of what you've heard so far in most medical literature. Omega-3s are not involved in skin health. It's all omega-6. And omega-6s are not pro-inflammatory. They're balanced. In my undergraduate work in lipid biochemistry, I could never understand how this omega-6 being pro-inflammatory and omega-3 being anti-inflammatory came to be, but it's very wrong and it needs to be corrected. So, what do we have to do? We got to look at the structure of the skin. As you can see here in this diagram, the skin is made of several layers, and it's the connective tissue that is where the EB patients have all the problem with. It's very fragile, it sloughs off very easily. Now, what's really important about the skin structure is realizing that the omegas in skin are almost all omega-6. It's 1,000-to-1 ratio. Of all the tissues in the body, it has almost no omega-3 in it. There's other areas, brain, muscles, but you can notice that in this slide is that predominantly omega-6 is the important fatty acid. Now, I don't want to get too much into the biochemistry because that's not what we're here for. I'm just explaining to you sort of on a very superficial level. But omega-6, for those who are interested, is also called linoleic acid, or LA. It's the most predominant fatty acid in nature today. Most plants are about 11-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3. And as you've probably heard, most physicians, naturopaths, things like that, say that we have a very omega-6 dominant diet, and that's leading to lots of inflammatory issues. So we keep trying to push omega-3s on people. That's actually wrong. We are predominantly omega-6. We need healthy omega-6 in our diet. And one of the biggest problems is that we have a lot of adulterated omega-6s in our diet. The omega-6 is really important for the skin because omega-6 is used to make that barrier that the skin is between the outside world and the inside world. It is essential for skin healing. It is a predominant proportion of the cell membranes of all the skin cells. Now I want to look at the cell itself. The cell is made up of membrane and is made up of a nucleus and is made up of organelles on the inside. Now that membrane is the barrier between the outside and the inside of the cells, and it is predominantly lipid. It's about 50% omegas. The predominant omega is omega-6. It has a very small proportion of omega-3, that predominantly being alpha-linolenic acid. Not that I wanted you to be concerned with the names too much. And it has some saturated fat and cholesterol in it. The rest of the membrane is protein, okay? But as you can see, the omega-6 is extremely important to the membrane structure and function. I'll go into both those areas in a second. So I'm going to show you some more biochemistry, but I want you to stick to the higher level function of this. Omega-6 is not pro-inflammatory. It's both pro and anti-inflammatory. And as you can see, this is called a fatty acid cascade. This is what fatty acids do in the body when they're used other than for structure. The omega-6 side, which is on the right-hand side, it goes through a couple of different steps. But then, if you can see this box, the blue box here, what's the first thing? Is called PGE1. That actually stands for prostaglandin E1. Now, prostaglandin E1 is actually the most potent anti-inflammatory the body makes. So you can see that the red or pink area is pro-inflammatory. The blue boxes are anti-inflammatory. It's a balance. It's not all one way or the other. And I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. You will see lots and lots of advertising out there, and that's mostly what it is, showing that omega-6 is pro-inflammatory and omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. I want you to try and forget that. We gotta remember that omega-6 is balanced, but the most important function of omega-6 is actually something that's never talked about, and that's in structure. Remember I talked about membranes? Well, it's interesting that the mitochondria, which are the energy producers of all our cells, is almost all membrane. Like, look at this picture. Look at all the invaginations and all that stuff. That's all membrane. So mitochondrial health is extremely important to overall cell health and overall health of your skin. And so if you look at it, why is there so much membrane there? Well, it turns out that all the enzymes, or the reactions that take place in the mitochondria to produce the energy the cell needs to function, happens on those membranes. And specifically, it happens on a type of membrane called cardiolipin. There's no test at the end of this, so don't worry about the names. But that cardiolipin is 100% omega-6. Now, why do you think that omega-6 is so important to the function? Well, it's interesting. And this just is another diagram that demonstrates the fact that almost all the enzymes exist on the membrane itself. And most of them actually are transmembrane, which means they actually are on both sides of the membrane. But again, membrane is going to be extremely important to the health of your cells and the mitochondria of your cells. So what does the mitochondria do? Well, it takes oxygen and uses the fuel that you eat, being whether it be sugars or fats, proteins, and it uses that oxygen to produce energy in the form of ATP. Don't worry, you don't have to remember that either. But that your cells can then use to do all the functions it needs to do. All right, so how does the oxygen actually get to the mitochondria? Now, this is the crucial point. We classically were taught, and I was taught this in undergraduate, I was taught it in medical school, that oxygen passively diffuses through cell membranes to get to the mitochondria where it's used to produce energy. That doesn't make any sense. Oxygen would have to passively diffuse through 7 cell membranes to get to the mitochondria where it's finally used to produce energy. Free oxygen running around a cell would be highly dangerous. So therefore, what has been shown, and there's only one study that's ever looked at this, is that the oxygen is actively carried by the omega-6 through those cell membranes to the mitochondria where it's used. So it's important that you have the proper omega-6 in those cell membranes, and that's what Pureform Omega gives you. All right. So while the rest of the world is talking about pathways and pro and anti-inflammatory, they're missing out on the big function. And the big function is that it's important to get oxygen delivered to the mitochondria where it's used to produce energy. And that is all done through the omega-6. And that's why it's so important to have proper omega-6 in your diet. If you look at most foods that you get from the shelf today, almost all of them will have processed fats in them. That's your canola oil, soy oil, corn oil, most generic vegetable oils that are used in deep fryers and stuff. Margarine, absolutely terrible stuff. And those omegas have been highly processed. And when you process them, you heat them multiple times, you turn them rancid, and then you take the smell and the solids out, and you're left with this dead oil. And that's what they tell you to be eating. It makes no sense. It's a barrier. It sets up barriers in your cells for proper oxygenation of your mitochondria. You get unhealthy cells, therefore you get unhealthy skin. And hopefully that's a simplistic enough explanation that you understand. And certainly at the end of this lecture, I will be giving out my email address, and if you have any further, more in-depth questions, you can get a hold of me at any time. All right, so what is the historic wrong that we're trying to correct here? Otto Warburg, I don't want to talk about too much, but I will talk about it because he's one of the greatest biochemists and physiologists of the 20th century. He worked in Germany from the 1930s to the 1950s. He won a Nobel Prize, and there's 2 other Nobel Prizes awarded to people who worked with him. He identified something called the Warburg effect, and he was able to show that if you actually decreased oxygen levels by about 30 to 35% in a cell culture, those cells would turn cancerous. So what do we see today? Cancer rates have gone from about 3% to about 60% of our population are going to get cancer at some point in their lifetime. That's impressive. And if you look at it, it was only after the introduction of adulterated fats in our diet that this started to happen. An interesting statistic that was brought to my attention. You know how smokers have increased risk of cancer? Well, it turns out that about 16% of smokers will get cancer at some point in their lifetime after about 25 years of smoking. But it turns out about 83% of people who consume adulterated fats will get cancer within 25 years of starting to consume adulterated fats. So 5 times more dangerous. We have to correct this abnormality. So what's really impressive about the product is how it will make you or your child feel after they start it. One of the interesting things about Pureform Omega is its main ingredient is evening primrose oil. And evening primrose oil has a really, really strong anti-inflammatory effect. I won't get into the biochemistry again, but it has a lot of what's called gamma-linolenic acid. Gamma-linolenic acid promotes the formation of that PGE1 I was talking about. Therefore, you or your child is going to have less pain and less inflammation, and it's going to happen quickly. And that's going to encourage you to keep taking the product and get the full benefit of it. All right. So again, we're going to look what other benefits. Again, brain, 100 to 1 omega-6 to omega-3. Skin, 1,000 to 1 we've already talked about. Muscle structure. If any of you are working out or have any athletic endeavors, you'll notice that your muscles perform much better when they're proper omega-6. You have better aerobic metabolism, which means better stamina and much quicker recovery time with no lactic acid buildup. You're going to notice a big difference on this. So let's look at some real examples. So on the left, you're going to see an 18-month-old child who has epidermolysis bullosa simplex. He get about 55 blisters a day, mostly on his feet. And as you can tell, if you get blisters on your feet, you're not walking very much. And in fact, he had not walked at all up until this point. After about 6 weeks on Pure Form Omega, his blisters went from 55 a day down to 5. And now he's running all over the place. His mother can barely keep up with him. He's been saving up all this energy just to be able to use it. The client on the right, this is dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. As you can tell, that's a pretty significant wound. Again, from the initiation to about 6 weeks later, there's about a 30% resolution of the wound there. If you notice the wound on the upper right, much less deep. The large red wound in the middle of her back, much better. And I don't know if any of you have children or know someone with this severe form of it, but she's done amazingly well, and she's still taking the product today. And this would be about 8 months later. And again, she's continuing to notice that she's healing at a much faster rate, and her skin's not breaking down as easily. Very, very positive results. We're very excited. And I don't think of all the literature I read around this disease, I've seen results quite like this. What I'd like to talk about is that today, and ongoing until we get enough clients, is that we want to give this product away for free. We want you to try it. We want you to try it on your kids. We're going to give a 3-month supply, absolutely free, no strings attached. All we ask is you give us feedback on what happens. And if you give us that feedback, we'll give you another 3 months for free. We want people to try this. We want to build a groundswell of people with this condition demanding this product to help them or their children. As I said initially, we have about 30 odd people on it now. Uniformly, almost great feedback from all of them. And we feel that this needs to be driven by the EB community. It's very difficult to get studies done, research studies done by hospitals or private clinics. So we're appealing to the EB community itself to try and get as many people on it as possible, and get the overwhelming feedback we feel will help us drive this into the rest of the world and help anybody in the world. This is not limited to North America. We will get the product to you no matter where you are. Just let us know. Please get a hold of us. If you have any questions, you can contact me at the email that's going to be on the screen, or contact Julia for arranged delivery. What I want to emphasize is that if we make your kids happy, you'll be happy. We've done our job. Okay, so try the product. There's no risk to it. It's an all natural, all organic product. It's cold pressed under a blanket of nitrogen. There is no oxidation of this fat of this omega. It's the all natural, original product, just like if you picked it from the ground yourself. I'm Dr. Jeff Matheson, and please email me at jeff@pureformomega.com if you have any questions about the offer, any questions about the product, how it works, if you want more science. I mean, I'm trying to keep this at a very easy to understand level, but I really would love your feedback on how this works for you or your children.